Ne yapalım? Kraliçenin televizyonu, BBC, resmi yayın organı İngiltere, yıllarca burada görev yapan, hem muhabirlikten başlayıp son nokta
kolay kolay orada görev yapamazsın.
Evet.
Sörler yönetti yıllarca BBC'yi.
Son geldiği nokta BBC yorumcusu Tony Gosling yaz boza özel açıklamalar yaptı. Londra'da sevgili Alparslan görüştü. Hep birlikte izliyoruz.
First of all, it's not just the Israelis, the Americans and the British that have established ISIS. It's really a NATO operation, I think. And this is where the Turkish military also comes in, because of course Turkey is also part of NATO. I think probably right from the very first days when Turkey joined NATO, there was always going to be this problem storing up for the future, where on the one hand Turkey is largely Islamic country and also part of this NATO power bloc. There was always going to be problems for Turkey deciding which side is it on. As for the origins of it, I think you'll find many of the fighters in ISIS are also from Libya and from Syria. So these are Islamist forces. The Islamic Fighting Group, for example, was supported by the British, by MI6 many years ago, in an attempt to kill Colonel Gaddafi, for example. And also in Syria, much support was given by Britain and other NATO countries to the Syrian rebels, we call them. Well, we like to call them the rebels, but we were helping to arm them via places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. So ISIS has not appeared out of nowhere. It's just a new name for an old organisation which was created to fight Colonel Gaddafi and to fight President Assad of Syria. It's just been rebranded. Literally, look at some of the commanders. Many of them have been tortured in American prisons. So these people are actually, I think, part of an operation which is much wider than just Israel, US and the UK. The ultimate purpose of ISIS is an interesting one. I think it's a honeypot. This is a kind of terminology which the intelligence people will use, because they know there's lots of disaffected people out there, mostly Islamic people who can see the way that the Islamic world is under attack right now, just as the Jewish people were under Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. There was a pogrom against the Jews. There's now many people who believe that there's a pogrom against the Islamic world, and in order to fight against that, they believe there needs to be an armed struggle. So ISIS is there to bring those people in. But the thing is, I believe it's still controlled by the NATO powers, and that's the whole point, is they want to control both sides of the chessboard in the war in the Middle East. As regards the monarchy, it's quite clear the British monarchy are pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist. Their influence is much greater than people realise in Britain. They have, for example, a lot of say over some key appointments in the military world, for example. The Duke of Edinburgh is a field marshal in the British Army, etc. So they have a lot more power than people realise. They also have freedom of information requests. So when journalists like me try and find out what the royals are up to, they just say, sorry, we can tell you nothing. So there's a lot of secrecy around the royal family. Also, the political side of Zionism is very strong in Britain. You've got Labour Friends of Israel, Conservative Friends of Israel, very powerful lobbying groups, Zionist lobbying groups with lots of money that sponsor candidates, much as they do in the United States. So the Israel lobby, I call it, really not Jewish, because many Jews are abhorred by the State of Israel, the way that the State of Israel has treated the Palestinians, for example, broken international law, that kind of thing. There's a lot of Jews that don't like it, but it's a very powerful force in Britain still, in politics, in royalty, and in Freemasonry, the religious cult. Well, for hundreds of years, the Rothschild family has been very important in the City of London. The City of London is a strange institution. Actually, the Queen has to ask permission if she wants to enter the City of London. The Rothschild family is extremely influential in Britain for hundreds of years now. The place where they reside is the City of London, the Rothschild Bank and investment firms. The City of London is run in almost like an independent state, a state within a state. Even the Queen has to call on the phone and ask permission if she wants to enter the City of London, because it's considered to be a challenge to their power if she comes in. Every way you walk into the City of London, you will find a red dragon staring at you in the street. Everywhere around the circle, around the outside of the City of London, these dragons are there. This is an old idea, many people maybe don't even notice it. But the dragon, of course, in biblical terms, symbolises the devil. So what is there about the City of London that might be to do with the dragon? Who knows? So it's a mysterious institution, the city, and the Rothschilds sit really in the centre. They're very powerful in regards to policy making. The Central Policy Review staff in Britain was set up in the 1970s, and who was the chair of it? Victor Rothschild. Maybe I'll say another couple of things about the Bilderberg conferences, because people may not know them. This is a secret meeting that takes place through the year, and a one big meeting every year. It was set up in 1954 after the Second World War, really from American big business that wanted to make sure that Europe, nobody in Europe, turned communist. They were very worried. The European countries, particularly Italy and Yugoslavia, were going to become communist countries. Yugoslavia obviously did, although it wasn't part of the Soviet Union, and this was a big worry for the Americans, and also for many rich and powerful people in Europe. They made all sorts of conspiracies about communism. This is a terrible thing. But the fact was, they were really worried about losing their industrial empires, because communists, if they saw somebody had too big a monopoly, too much power, they would take that off them and nationalise it. And that meant that the big families would lose their wealth. So really it was a selfish thing to do, and the Bilderberg conferences were set up to make sure that there was no drift in Europe towards the left, and it stayed more in favour of the United States, not of the Soviet Union. And it was very successful, even though it was quite secretive. The Bilderberg conferences I've been studying really since 1996, when I first discovered them, and I can tell you it's a pretty simple operation. Really, they are the lobby for the NATO countries. They certainly don't control the world, although they would very much like to, and they work very closely with the banking system and the military, most importantly. Also, of course, oil companies. But they're there to coordinate the grabbing of more and more resources to themselves. They're an extremely powerful organisation. The people that meet at their annual conference, 120 or so, control most of the money in the Western world. There's very little that they don't control. They have in their media too. So, for example, the BBC sent somebody, but they don't actually report on the conference. So they're involved in the discussions, but they don't like to report on the conference. At a national level, you'll find similar organisations to the Bilderberg, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, for example.